Hello everyone. So now we will start the sense organs. Okay, so we are done with the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and we have also seen how this all nervous system will be working in a coordinated manner to carry out the different functions of organism in different ways and at different situations. Okay, so let us see the sense organs. So we know that we have got different type of changes which are occurring every day and around us. Okay, so these changes are called as stimulus. These changes are called as stimulus, and this stimulus is perceived by a body. This stimulus is perceived by an organism with the help of some specific organs. This stimulus will be perceived by an organism with the help of specific organs called as sense organs. So we have studied from beginning very long period that there are 5 sense organs, that is nose, tongue, ear and eyes, and all these organs are responsible for different type of senses. Like the nose is responsible for smell, tongue is responsible for taste, ear is responsible for listening or hearing the things, and the eyes is responsible for seeing the things. We can see due to the eyes. Okay, now let us see all this. Mainly we'll be discussing about the ears and the eyes, okay, and their functioning. Now briefly we will discuss about the nose. So what are nose? Nose contains a mucus coated receptors. This will be containing mucus coated receptors which are specialized for receiving the sense of smell, and these receptors are called as olfactory receptors. So the nose will be containing some specific receptors called as olfactory receptors, which are responsible for sensing the smell, okay, and these are called as olfactory receptors. These are made up of olfactory epithelium. That consists of 3 kinds of cell. So these receptors are basically made up of olfactory epithelium, and which will be consisting the mainly 3 kinds of cell. The cells are neurons, and the cells will be the neurons. Okay, these cells are the neurons. This will be made up of 3 types of cells. The neurons of the olfactory epithelium extends from outside environment directly into a pair of broad bean-sized organs called as olfactory bulb. So the neurons, which are basically the neurons of olfactory epithelium, extend from the outside environment. It extends from the outside environment directly into a pair of broad bean-sized organ. Called as olfactory bulb, which are the extensions of the brain's limbic system. We have already done the limbic system. So this olfactory bulb are the extensions of the brain's limbic system. Okay. And apart from this nose, we have got tongue as well. So both the nose and tongues detect the dissolved chemicals. So how do the nose will be we are able to smell because some chemicals are present in these gases. Okay, so we are able to smell it. Similarly, the tongue is able to receive the signals from the chemicals which are dissolved in the food substances and different type of solution. The chemical senses of gustation and olfactory. So gustation is the taste. The chemical senses of the gustation, or we can say taste, and olfactory, that is smell, are functionally similar and are interrelated. So you would have seen that the addition of the smell also adds up to the flavor of the food. Okay, because they are basically similar. They are similar. The gustation, that is the taste receptors, and the olfactory, that is the smell receptors, are functionally similar, and hence they are interrelated. Okay, the tongues The tongue detects the taste through the taste buds which are present on the tongue, okay, containing gustatory receptors. So taste buds are the region on the tongue where this gustation receptors are present, and this gustation receptors and the olfactory receptors both will be functionally same. Okay, now let us see the next part, that is the eye. The first sensory organs which we are going to discuss is the eye. Okay, now a pair of eyes are located in sockets. In the case of human beings, mainly paired eyes are located in the sockets of the skull called as orbits. So what are orbits? Orbits is a skull, orbits is a region where this eyes are basically present in a skull. Eyes are present in the skull. A brief account of structure. Let us discuss about the structure of this eye. So here, the human adult eye, the adult human eyeball. This is the eyeball. This is an eyeball. This is an eyeball. Okay, this is an eyeball. So adult human eyeball is nearly spherical in structure. We can see it's almost spherical. This part is basically a bit of oval shaped. Otherwise, it's almost spherical in structure. So adult human eyeball is nearly spherical structure. The wall of eyeball is composed of 3 layers. So here we can see these are the 3 layers over here. The wall of the eyeball is made up of 3 layers. The what all these 3 layers are? Sclera. This is the outermost layer, that is the sclera. Okay, the outermost layer will be the sclera. And second layer will be the choroid, and the third was the retina. So we can see the wall of, we can see right down, we can see the wall of eyeball. The wall of eyeball is composed of 3 layers. The wall of eyeball is composed of 3 layers. The outermost layer is called as sclera. The outermost layer is called as sclera, which is composed of dense connective tissue. Which is composed of dense connective tissue, and called as sclera. So write it down. So the outermost layer sclera is composed of dense connective tissue. Is composed of dense connective tissue. Okay. Now anterior to this sclera, just when we move from outside to inside. So after the sclera, the anterior portion will be, the anterior portion of this layer is called as cornea. So let us see. Just a minute. Okay, so you can see the sclera. This is the outermost portion of the outermost layer of the eyeball. Okay, now the anterior part of this layer is called as cornea. So here you can see this is the anterior part of the sclera. This is the one called as cornea. So what is cornea? Cornea is the anterior part of the sclera, which is the outermost layer, which is made up of dense connective tissues. Okay, the middle layer is called as choroid. The middle layer, after this sclera, when we move inside, we will be having a second layer called as cornea. Called as choroid. Okay, now this choroid contains many blood vessels. This choroid will be containing many blood vessels and looks bluish in color. They will be containing many blood vessels, so it is connected to the blood vessels and will be this color. This layer it looks like a bluish in color, and this choroid layer is thin over the posterior 2/3 of the eyeball, but becomes thick in the anterior part of the anterior part to form the ciliary body. So here you can see this choroid is basically in the most of the 2/3 part of this whole eyeball is thin, so you cannot distinguish over here at least particularly. So here it is basically very thin, but it is very thick over here. It is very thick over here and over here in the anterior part. So it is very thick in the anterior part. So the choroid layer is thin over the posterior. So over the posterior part, over around 2/3 of the eyeball, it will be thin. Okay, but it becomes thick in the anterior part of the anterior part. It will be forming a thick layer. Okay, and it will be forming a ciliary body. So it is thinner at the posterior part. This choroid will be thinner in the posterior part and will be thicker in the anterior part of the anterior part, and called as ciliary body. It's called as ciliary body. Okay, now this ciliary body itself continues forward to form a pigmented and opaque structure called as iris. Now this ciliary body, these are the ciliary bodies, will continue itself forward to form a pigmented and opaque structure. This is the pigmented and opaque structure called as iris. So this ciliary bodies will be continuing in both the sides, will be forming a opaque and pigmented structure called as iris, which is the visible color portion of the eye. So whenever we are looking at someone's eye, we can find out the different color of eye. Like it will be brown color, it may be blue, sometimes it may be green color, black color. So this color is due to the pigmentation of this iris. This color is mainly due to the pigmentation of this iris. Okay, so the eyeball contains, so this iris is responsible for this coloration. Now the eyeball contains a transparent crystalline lens. This eyeball will be containing a transparent crystalline lens. This is the lens which is basically seen over here. It is crystalline and transparent, from which the light can pass through. So it will be containing a transparent crystalline lens which is held in place which is held in place by ligaments attached to the ciliary body. So this ciliary body will be attached with some ligaments which will be responsible for holding this lens, at its position, Okay. So up to now what we have seen the three layers are there: the sclera, choroid and retina. The sclera is the outermost layer, which is made up of dense, which is basically mainly responsible for, which is made up of dense connective tissue particularly, and this sclera is posteriorly present, okay, and anteriorly it is converted into cornea. It is basically converted into cornea that is thick in nature comparatively, okay. Now after this sclera we have got choroid. The 2/3 part of the choroid will be basically thinner, covering this eyeball as a thin membrane, but at the anterior surface it will be connected to ciliary bodies, which will be forming a thick structure, and this ciliary body will be getting continuous and form a iris. This iris are basically containing the pigments, and hence pigmentation, due to pigmentation the color of eye will be different, and this will be having ligaments attached to it. These ligaments are holding this lens at a proper position. These ligaments will be holding this lens at a proper position, and this lens is a opaque. Sorry, this lens will be the transparent, crystalline in nature. This lens will be transparent and crystalline in nature. Okay, so that was about the structure of eye up to now. Now, in front of the lens, the aperture surrounded by the iris is called as pupil. Now this just before this lens there is an aperture. This is an aperture. This is the aperture, this aperture is surrounded by the iris. This is the iris. So this is the aperture, or we can say opening. This opening of this aperture is called as pupil. And the diameter of the pupil is regulated by the muscle fibers of iris. Now the iris will be having these muscle fibers by which the pupil opening and closing will be regulated. So we can say this diameter of this pupil will be regulated by this ciliary fibers muscle. Will be regulated by the muscle fibers of the iris. Okay, will be regulated by the muscle fibers of the iris. Okay. Next, the innermost layer of this three layer is the retina. The innermost layer of the three is called the retina. Here you can see this red in color. So this retina, the innermost layer is the retina, and it contains three layers of neural cells. Now it is so important. This retina will be consisting of three different layers of the neural cells. This will be consisting three different layers of neural cells from inside to outside. So the ganglion cells, the bipolar cells, and the photoreceptor cells. So three different type of neural cells which are present in retina are the ganglion cells from inside to outside. We are moving from inside to outside. So first will be the ganglion cells, next bipolar cells, and the third one is the photoreceptor cells. The photoreceptor cells will be present over here, after which the bipolar cells, and the last one will be the ganglion cells from inside to outside. Okay. Now there are two types of photoreceptor cells. So in retina, understand, we have got three different layers made up of three neural cells, which are this ganglion cells, bipolar cells, and the photoreceptor cells. And these photoreceptor cells are of again two types, that is cone cells and rod cells. Rod cells, you can note it down, or we can say cone cells. So they will be consisting of rod cells and the cone cells. These cells contain a light sensitive protein called photopigments. The photoreceptor cells will be containing a specific type of protein which is light sensitive, which will be regulated, which will be affected by the light. Okay, so it's called as photosensitive pigment. Okay, so they will be containing a light sensitive pigment, or we can say photosensitive pigment or protein called as photopigments. The daylight, that is the phototropic. Okay, the daylight, that is photopic vision, and the color vision are functions of the cones, and the twilight, we can say scotopic vision, is the function of the rods. The rod cells and the cone cells are of two different types of photoreceptors, where the cone cells are responsible for the daylight, are responsible for the visualization in the daylight. Okay, responsible for daylight, and also for distinguishing and knowing the colors. So the cone cells are the one which are responsible for the daylight, which are responsible for daylight vision, and it is also responsible for the vision of color. It is also responsible for color of vision. So it can differentiate the color. It will be responsible for seeing the colors. Okay, and while the other cells, that is the rod cells basically responsible for they are used in the scotopic light, or we can say in in the night, in the low intensity of light. So the cone cells are functioning at the high intensity of light and are basically able to distinguish or see the colors. Okay, while the rod cells are the one which will be functioning in the low intensity of light, that is the at night, particular twilight. Okay, vision, and it's the function of the rods. Now the rods contain a purplish red pigment protein called as rhodopsin. So the rod cells will be containing a specific type of red purplish colored pigment called as rhodopsin, or visual purple, we can say. It can be also called as visual purple, which contains a derivative of vitamin A. So this rhodopsin will be made up of a derivative vitamin A. And in the human eye, there are 3 types of cones. In the case of human eyes, we can see there are 3 types of cones. So rod cells were basically made up of rhodopsin, a purplish red protein, which is the derivative of the vitamin A. Okay, that's retinol particularly. And there are 3 types of cones particularly. In the human eyes, we have got 3 types of cones which possesses their own characteristics photopigments, which will be containing their own characteristic photopigments that respond to red, green and blue lights. So the cone cells will be having their own 3 types of cone cells will be present, which will be responsible for responding to the red, green and blue lights, which will be responsible for responding to the red, green and blue lights. And this, all the colors will be responded by different type of cells. It will be responded by different type of cells. Okay, and the sensations of different colors are produced by various combination of these cones and their photopigments. The sensation of these different colors are produced by the various combination of these cones and their photopigments. Okay, so there are 3 type of cones responsible for sensitizing these 3 different type of colors: red, blue and green. Okay, while the rod cells will be consisting the protein rhodopsin, which is responsible for the mainly the high intensity of light. Okay, so sorry, the low intensity of light. It will use for the low intensity of light. Okay, next, when these cones are stimulated equally, a sensation of white light is produced. When all the 3 cone cells, we know that the white light is made up of all the colors. Okay, so when all the 3 cones are simultaneously stimulated. So when all the 3 cones are, if stimulated simultaneously, then the sensation of white light is produced. Then the sensation of white light will be produced. Okay, so that was about the structure of the eye and the function, a bit of function. Okay, so let us see again. So this is the sclera, choroid, retina basically consisting of 3 layers of cells, that is rod cells and cone cells. Okay, and the the 3 layers will be consisting the ganglion cells, bipolar cells and the photoreceptors. And these photoreceptors can be of 2 types, that is rod cells and cone cells. Rod cells will be having rhodopsin and responsible for the daylight and the color sensitivity protein, and the rod cells will be responsible for the low light, or we can say scotopic vision, and get active at the low intensity of light. The cone cells are of again 3 types depending on the color, depending on the pigment they have, and they are basically red, green and blue. Okay, red, green and blue lights. Okay, and depending on its what light is depending on the characteristic of pigment which they respond to, and the sensation of different colors are produced by various combination of this and cones. Okay, various combination of cones and the pigments. And when all these cones are stimulated equally, so what will happen? A sensation of white light is produced. That was about this cone cells and the rod cells. Now the optic nerve. These are the optic nerves you can see, which is connected to the brain. The optic nerve leave the eye and the retinal body blood vessels. The optical nerve will leave the eye and the retinal blood vessels, enter it at a point medial to slightly above the posterior pole of the eyeball. So this is the site of the optic nerve through which it can enter. So it will be entering from the posterior side of the eyeball, okay, and will be containing the blood vessels. So the optic nerves leave the eye and retinal blood vessels enter it at a point medial to the slightly above the posterior pole of the eyeball. Now the photoreceptors are not present in that region, and hence it is called as blind spot. this, what is blind spot? Blind spot is that region where the photoreceptors are absent, and the retinal blood vessels will be entering into the eyeball, and optic nerve will be releasing from that particular point. So this is the point where the optic nerves are basically leaving this eye, and the blood vessels will be entering, and just in front of this point we have got a point where the light is not entering, where the light is not felt. Okay, so this is called as blind spot. So the photoreceptors are not present, hence it should not be felt. So this is a site where the photoreceptors are absent, and hence this region is called as blind spot. Okay. Now at the posterior pole of the eye, lateral to the blind spot. So here this is the posterior pole, and this lateral to this blind spot, there is a yellowish pigmented spot called as muscula lutea. There is a yellowish pigment called as muscula lutea with a central pit called the fovea. So here we can see this is the lateral side of the posterior to this blind spot. Okay, lateral to the blind spot, we have got a small yellow colored structure. We can say we have got a small region, yellowish pigmented spot, and within this spot we have got this spot is called as macula lutea. It's called as macula lutea with the central pit called as fovea. So this is the yellow spot, macula lutea, is present just lateral to this blind spot. Okay, and within this we have got the central pit, which is called as fovea. Okay, the fovea is a thinned out portion of the retina where only the cones are densely packed. So this is the retina layer where the only cone cells are present. Okay, so it's a region. The fovea is a thinned out portion. It's a thinned out portion of the retina where only the cones are densely packed. So in this region, only the cone cells are present and the rod cells are absent. Okay, and it is the point where the visual resolution is the greatest. Okay, so here because the cone cells are only present, so it will be the place where the visual acuity, or we can say resolution, is the greatest. So it will be having the greatest of its resolution. The space between this cornea and the lens is called as aqueous humor. So this is space between this cornea, a part of sclera, okay, and this lens. So there's a hollow space of this cornea and the lens. It is filled with a specific fluid. It will be filled with a specific fluid, and this space is called as aqueous chamber. This space between this cornea and the lens is called as aqueous chamber, and it contains a thin watery fluid. This space between the cornea and the lens is called as aqueous chamber, which is filled with a watery fluid called as aqueous humor. It's called as aqueous humor. The space between the lens and the retina. So this is the space between the cornea and the lens, while the space between the lens and retina, is called as vitreous chamber. And is filled with a transparent gel called vitreous humor. And this is filled with the transparent vitreous humor. Okay, so what we have seen the structure of eye. Let us revise it clearly once again. So part of an eye, it is nearly a spherical structure. The wall of the eye is composed of 3 layers. Okay, and these 3 layers are basically, the outer one is a sclera, which is made up of dense connective tissue, and in just the sclera's anterior portion of the sclera is called as cornea, which is just most outside, just the anterior part of the eyeball. And the middle layer is choroid, and this will contain many blood vessels, okay, and looks bluish in color. This choroid layer is thin over the posterior through side of the eyeball, but it becomes thick at the anterior part and forms the ciliary body. So these are ciliary body formed by the choroid. Okay, these are ciliary body formed by the choroid, and cornea is formed by the sclera. Okay, and the ciliary body itself continues forward to form a pigmented and opaque structure called as iris. So this iris is the pigmented and opaque structure, is basically iris, which is the visible colored portion of an eye. We can see the different color of eyes. Okay, so it is depending on the pigmentation present in this iris. The eyeball contains a transparent crystalline lens. This eyeball will be containing a transparent but crystalline lens through which the light will be passing. Okay, so it will be containing the transparent crystalline lens which is held in place by the ligaments, this is held in place by the ligaments attached to the ciliary body. Okay, in front of the lens, the aperture is surrounded by the iris, is called as pupil. So just before this lens, there is an aperture, or we can say opening, which is regulating this opening, is called as pupil. This opening is called as pupil, and this pupil, the diameter of this pupil is regulated. The diameter of the pupil is regulated by the muscle fibers of the iris. Okay, so that was about the structure. Next, the inner layer is basically the retina. Is basically the innermost layer. It is again made up of 3 layers of cell. These cells are the ganglion cells, bipolar cells, and the photoreceptor cells. Now the photoreceptor cells are of again 2 types, rods and cones, where the rods are active during the daylight, okay, and are the one which are responsible for color vision, while the cone cells or the rod cells are the one which is active in the dim light, or in the twilight, or during the night time, less intensity, or during the low intensity. And this rod contains a purplish red protein pigment called as rhodopsin. It's called as rhodopsin or visual purple, which contains a derivative of vitamin A, that is retinol. Okay, and in the human eye, there are 3 types of cones which possess their own characteristic, that is blue pigment, the own characteristic pigment that respond to red, green, and blue lights. And the sensation of different colors are produced by the various combination of these color cones and the photopigment. So there are 3 types of cones, mainly giving the sensation, responding to the colored eyes, the colored light, that is green, blue, and red. Green, blue, and red. Okay, these are the main colors. When it is basically activated simultaneously, when all the lights, all the cone cells are activated simultaneously, it will give a white color light. It will give a white light sensation. When these cones are stimulated equally, the sensation of white light is produced. Now the optic nerve leaves the eye. We can see the optic nerve is there, which is leaving the eye through this spot. Okay, and through this spot only the blood vessels will be getting inside, entering this eye. And just before this particular region, there will be a region which will not be having the photoreceptors, and hence called as blind spot. So optical nerves will leaves the eye and retain the retinal blood, and the retinal blood vessels enter it at a point medial to and slightly above the posterior pole of the eye. Okay, and this is called as, the photoreceptors are not present in that region, and hence it is called as blind spot. And at the posterior pole of the eye, lateral to the blind spot, there is a yellowish pigment called as macula lutea, which is a central pit called as fovea. And this fovea, this is a thin retina. This is a thin membrane retina. Okay, the fovea is the thinned out portion of the retina, where only the cones are densely packed. And rods are absent. Here the cones are only packed and rods are absent, and it is the point where the visual activity, that is resolution, is the greatest, or we can say highest. The space between this cornea and the lens is called as aqueous chamber. The space between the cornea and the lens, is called as aqueous chamber. Okay, and this cavity will be filled with a fluid which is called as aqueous humor. Okay, while the space between this lens and this retina, is basically called the vitreous chamber, and it is filled with a transparent gel called a vitreous humor. So there is an aqueous humor between the lens and the cornea, while the vitreous humor between the lens and the retina within the vitreous chamber. That was about the structure of eye, okay, and the different pigments associated with it. Now let us see the mechanism of the vision, how basically an organism, or particularly the human beings, will be able to visualize the things, how we basically perceive the image, So let us see the diagrammatic representation of this eye again. So when the light rays in visible wavelength focused on the retina, so what happens? These light waves will be getting inside this cell, inside this eye, through this lens, and this lens will be focusing this wavelength on the retina through the cornea and the lens, we can say. So when the light rays in the visible wavelength, so it should be visible wavelength, that is 400 to 700 nanometer. It cannot basically distinguish, it cannot basically visualize the out of visible wavelength. Okay, so the light rays in the visible wavelength get focused on the retina. There's this particular that is the wall of the eye. Okay, eyeball. Now it get focused on the retina through the cornea and the lens, okay, and which will be generating the potentials in the rods and the cones. So when this light falls on the retina, it will be generating the action potential in the rod cells and the cone cells. It will be generating action potential in the rod cells and the cone cells. As we have already mentioned earlier, that the photosensitive compounds, that is photopigments, as we know that the photosensitive compounds, that is photopigments, in human eye is composed of opsin. It's a protein, right? It's a protein, and the retinal, an aldehyde of vitamin A. So we have seen the retinal, the aldehyde, the derivative of vitamin A, that is retinal, and rhodopsin, or we can say opsin protein. These are the photopigments present in the rod cells and the cone cells. Okay, so this will be consisting of opsins and the retinal. Now the light induces the dissociation of retinal from opsin. So due to this light effect, what will happen? The dissociation of the retinal from opsin will take place. Dissociation of the retinal from this opsin will take place. Okay, so dissociation of the retinal from the opsin will take place, resulting in changes in the structure of opsin, which will result in the changes in the structure of the opsin, which will result in the changes in the structure of opsin. This change in the structure of opsin causes the membrane permeability changes. This will be responsible for changing the membrane permeability, and as a result, the potential differences are generated in the photoreceptor cells. So what happens? The light which is falling on the retina will be falling on the cone cells and rod cells, where due to this light effect, what will happen? The two pigments, that is opsin and the retinal, will get dissociated. So when this get dissociated, what will happen? The structure of the opsin get changes. And this will be responsible for changing the permeability of the membrane. This changing the opsin structure of the retinal, so the changing the structure of the opsin will lead to the changing the permeability of the membrane, due to which the potential differences are generated in photoreceptor cells. These potential differences are generated in the photoreceptor cells, which will be producing a signal that generates action potentials, which will be responsible for producing a signal that generates action potential in the ganglion cells. So after the cone cells, rod cells, what is the type of cell we have got? Ganglion cells. This will be responsible for generating action potential in the ganglion cells through the bipolar cells. So the retina cells will be basically getting, the photoreceptor cells will get action potential is generated over there due to the change in the structure of the opsin, due to which the bipolar cells will get activated. Okay, it will be causing the formation of action potential over there, which will be transmitted to the bipolar cells, which will be transported to the ganglion cells, Okay, and this action potential are transmitted by the optic nerve to the visual center. This will be basically then passed to the visual center through the optical nerves. Okay, and visual cortex area of the brain, where the neural impulses are analyzed, and the image formed on the retina is recognized based on the earlier memory and experience. Okay, so how this mechanism of the image formation is done? Let us start again. So here the light will be entering from the cornea and lens, and it will be falling on this retina. When this falls on retina, it will be perceived by the cone cells and rod cells. Which have got photoreceptors present on it, and this will be having photosensitive pigments. These pigments are the opsin and the aldehyde derived vitamin A derivative, that is the retinal. Now what will happen? Retinal and opsin will get dissociated, and due to this dissociation, the opsin will change its structure. And when this opsin changes its structure, it will cause the change in permeability of the membrane of cone cells and rod cells. Okay, so it will change the permeability of the rod and cone cells of retina. Okay, so this will be responsible for generating the action potential responsible for the potential differences across the membrane of the photoreceptors, due to which the action potential will be generated to the next cells, that is the bipolar cells. So the bipolar cells will be generating action potential, which will be transmitted to the ganglion cells, and through these ganglion cells it will be transferred to the optic nerve, and this optic nerve will be carrying this transmission to the visual cortex, and over there it will be analyzed in the brain, and then the image will be basically recognized on the basis of the image which is formed at the retina will be recognized on the basis of past experience. Okay, and hence we will be able to see. So that is about how this mechanism of the vision is basically possible. So this is how the image is formed.
Let us revise. The light rays are visible wavelength focused on the retina through the cornea and lens, which generates the potential in the rod and cone cells. Now, the photosynthetic compounds in the human eye is composed of opsin and retinal. Light induces dissociation of this retinal and opsin, resulting in change in the structure of opsin we have seen, and this structural change in the opsin, which will be responsible for the causing the change in the permeability of membrane, will be responsible for causing the change in the permeability of membrane, due to which the potential differences are generated in the photoreceptor cells. This produces a signal that generates action potential in the ganglion through the bipolar cells. This is what we have seen. This will generate a signal. This will generate an action potential in the ganglion cells through the bipolar cells. This action potential impulses are transmitted by the optic nerves to the visual cortex area of the brain. It will be transmitted to the optic nerves to the visual cortex area of the brain, where the neural impulses are analyzed in the visual cortex. The neural impulses will be analyzed, and the image formed on the retina is recognized based on the earlier memory and the experience. That is about the mechanism of formation of image. Okay, and the next sensory organ is the ear. I hope the things are clear with the eye. Okay, the structure, the function, and how it basically will be carrying out the formation, the image formation. Okay, next is the ear.
So ear is also one of the important sensory organs. It is also one of the most important sensory organs, which is responsible for mainly two functions. Okay, so let us start the ear. So ear will be responsible for carrying out two main functions, two sensory functions. This is the hearing, or we can say listening, okay, and maintenance of body balance, or maintaining the body posture. It's very important function which ear is carrying out. Okay, anatomically, let us see what is the structure of ear. So anatomically, the ear can be divided into three major sections. Anatomically, we can divide the ear into three major sections. That is the outer ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. Okay, so outer ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. So here we can see what all these are. So the first one, the outer ear, consists of the pinna and external auditory meatus. So this is the pinna, the one flap-like cartilaginous structure which is found outside this ear. Okay, so this is the pinna, cartilaginous structure, which is part of the outer ear, pinna, and the external auditory meatus, or you can say external auditory canal. Okay, so this auditory canal is that canal through which the sound waves are getting inside. This is the canal through which the sound waves are getting inside. Okay, so external auditory meatus and the pinna are the one which are making the external ear. Now the pinna collects the vibration in the air which produces sound. Okay, this will be collecting the vibration which will producing the sound, and the external auditory canal leads inwards and extends up to the tympanic membrane. This canal will be leading up to the tympanic membrane, that is the eardrum. Okay, there are very fine hairs in wax secreting glands in the skin of pinna. So this pinna will be having the hair which is responsible for trapping the dust particles. Okay, there are different types of fine hairs and the wax secreting glands. It's also consisting the wax secreting glands in the skin of the pinna and the canal. So this skin of this canal and this pinna will be having hair and the wax secreting glandular cells which are the one responsible for trapping the dust particles coming inside. Okay, hence protecting it. The tympanic membrane is composed of connective tissues covered with skin outside and with mucous membrane inside. This tympanic membrane is composed of a connective tissue. It's composed of connective tissue covered with a skin. So here we can see a skin will be covered with a skin outside and with a mucous membrane inside. So it will be having two layers. The skin will be covering it outside and the mucous membrane will be there inside. The middle ear, this is the middle ear. Now this is the middle ear. The middle ear contains three ossicles. The middle ear will consisting three ossicles which are called as malleus, insus, and steps. These three bony structures. This is malleus, second is insus, and third one is steps. So this is the part of middle ear. This is the part of middle ear. So the middle ear consists of 3 ossicles, that is malleus, insus and steps, which are attached to one another, in a chain-like fashion. So first one is the malleus, second is the insus, and third one is the steps. These all three are attached with each other in a chain-like manner, forming a chain-like structure. The malleus is attached to the tympanic membrane. So this is the tympanic membrane we have seen. It is attached to the malleus. Okay, the malleus is attached to the tympanic membrane, and the steps is attached to the oval window. It is attached to the oval window. This is the oval window. This is the oval window. Okay, oval window. So here we can see the malleus is attached to the tympanic membrane, while the steps is attached to the oval window. The steps is attached to the oval window of the cochlea. So this is the cochlea. This is the cochlea. This spiral-like structure is called as cochlea, and the opening of this cochlea is the steps of over. There is a oval window. That's the oval window. Okay. So this malleus, insus, and steps. These are the smallest bones of the body, which are basically 3 in nature and which will be connected with each other in a chain-like manner. Out of this, the malleus will be connected to the tympanic membrane, and the steps will be connected to the oval window of which is the opening of the cochlea. The ear ossicles increases the efficiency of the transmission of the ear ossicles. These are the ear ossicles, which it increases the efficiency of the transmission of the sound waves to the inner ear. It will increases the efficiency of the sound waves to the inner ear. Okay, and an eustachian tube connects the middle ear cavity with the pharynx. So this is the eustachian tube. Here you can see this is a red color. The eustachian tube will be eustachian canal, also called as eustachian canal. So eustachian tube will be connecting this middle ear to the pharynx. So hence we can see many times we do feel, if we basically have some drops in the ear, we may feel it in the mouth as well, right? That is due to it will be secreted, it will be released out through this eustachian tube in the pharynx. Okay, so the ear ossicles increases the efficiency of transmission, and the eustachian tube connects the middle ear cavity in the pharynx. Okay, the eustachian tube helps in equalizing the pressure on either sides of eardrum. So this is the main function of eustachian tube. It will be responsible for equalizing the pressure on either sides of the eardrums. So eardrums has got 2 sides, so it will be responsible for equalizing the pressure at both the sides. It will be responsible for equalizing the pressure on both the sides of the eardrum. Okay, so up till now what we have seen: the middle ear, the outer ear will consisting pinna, and this external auditory canal. The skin of pinna and auditory canal will be basically having this hair and the sebaceous gland, which will be releasing the wax, okay, which is getting trapped, and hence this is protected from the dust particles. And this will be the tympanic membrane. This tympanic membrane will be having 2 layers. The outer will be skin layer, and the inner will be mucous membrane. And the next will be starting the middle ear. The middle ear will be consisting of malleus, insus, and steps. Are the chain of 3 bones. It's a 3 bones connected with each other in a chain-like manner. While the malleus is attached to the tympanic membrane, while the steps is attached to the opening of the oval window, or we can say opening of the cochlea. Okay, and there will be this middle ear will be also having a specific tube, which is called as eustachian tube, which will connecting this middle ear to the pharynx. Okay, which is connecting this middle ear to the pharynx, and it is responsible for maintaining the pressure. It is responsible for maintaining the pressures on either sides of the eardrum. It is responsible for maintaining the pressure on either sides of the eardrum. Okay, now the fluid filled inner ear called labyrinth. Now there will be a fluid, the inner ear. This is the inner ear. Okay, this is the inner ear. Now after the middle ear we will be having the inner ear. The fluid filled inner ear called labyrinth consists of 2 parts, the bony and the membranous labyrinth. Okay, so the inner ear will be consisting of 2 parts, that is bony part and the membranous labyrinth part. The bony labyrinth is a series of channels. This bony labyrinth is a series of channels. Inside these channels lie a membranous labyrinth, which is surrounded by fluid called perilymph. So this is the inner ear. We can see the structure of inner ear. Okay, this is the structure of inner ear. And this is also not exactly the structure of inner ear. Okay, let us see where we can find it out. Okay, so the inner membrane, the inner ear will be consisting of labyrinth, which is the fluid filled inner ear, okay, called as labyrinth, which consists 2 parts, that is the bony part and the membranous part. The bony labyrinth is a series of channels. This is forming a, you can see it is forming a series of channels. Okay, and within which lies the membranous labyrinth, which is surrounded by a fluid called perilymph. So that membranous labyrinth will be surrounded by the fluid called as perilymph. The membranous labyrinth is filled with a fluid called endolymph. The membranous labyrinth is filled with a fluid called as endolymph. Okay, it is surrounded by perilymph and it is filled with the endolymph. The coiled portion of labyrinth is called as cochlea. So this is the cochlea. This is cochlea. Here you can see. So this cochlea will be. This is this coiled portion. This is the labyrinth. This coiled portion of this labyrinth is called as cochlea. And the membranous constituting cochlea. The membranes constituting cochlea. The resiners and bacillars. The cochlea, resiners, bacillars divide the surrounding perilymph into the labyrinth into upper skull vestibuli and the lower skull tympani. Okay, so here you can see that this is representation of sexual wave of cochlea. So when we see the cochlea, so it will be dividing into mainly this part, that is the scala vestibuli. This is the, so the membrane is constituting cochlea. Okay, the coiled portion of the labyrinth is called as cochlea, and the membranes constituting this cochlea, the membranes which are present in this cochlea, that is resiners and bacillar. This is a raciner. This is a raciner membrane. This is a raciner membrane, and this is the bacillar membrane. Okay, this is the bacillar membrane. This is the raciner membrane. Okay, so different membranes. Which are the membranes? The first one is the raciner membrane. This is the raciner membrane, and this is the bacillar membrane. This is the bacillar membrane. This divides the perilymph filled bony. This will be divide the surrounding perilymph filled bony labyrinth into upper scala vestibuli. This is upper scala vestibuli, and it will be also dividing into the lower scala tympani. So this is the scala tympani, lower scala tympani, and this is the upper scala vestibuli. Okay, and the space between this and the space within this cochlea called as scala media. This is the space between this cochlea is called as scala media, is filled with the endolymph. So here it is basically having this two membranes are there, the Reynolds membrane, Reisner's membrane, and this bacillar membrane. This will be dividing this whole structure into three parts, that is the mainly two parts, bony structure into two parts, the scala vestibuli and this bacillar membrane, the scala tympani. Okay, and over there it will be also having this inner cavity called as scala media, which is filled with the endolymph, and these two cavities, scala vestibuli and this scala tympani, are covered with the perilymph. Okay, so at the base of the cochlea, the scala vestibuli ends at the oval window. At the base of this cochlea, the scala vestibuli ends at the oval window, which was basically the opening of this tympani. Okay, which was opening of this cochlea, which will be attached to the steps. Okay, so at the base of this scala vestibuli, ends at the oval window, while the scala tympani terminates at the round window. Which opens the middle ear. Okay, so you can see we have got this open oval window from which the scala vestibuli will be opening, and there is another round window from which the scala tympani will be opening. Okay, so next is basically, so let us again discuss it once again. So the structure of the ear will be consisting of three parts, that is outer ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. The outer ear will consisting of pinna and the auditory canal, consisting of the hair and the waxy glands. Okay, and it will be having the tympanic membrane consisting of two layers, that is skin layer and the mucus layer. Middle ear will be consisting of malleolus steps, which are attached to the tympanic membrane and the oval window, and there will be a eustachian tube which will be connecting middle ear to the pharynx. Now in the inner ear we will be finding a labyrinth. This labyrinth are of two types, that is bony labyrinth and the membranous labyrinth. The bony labyrinth is filled with a fluid called as perilymph, while the membranous labyrinth, which is filled with the the bony labyrinth, is a series of channels, and inside these channels lies a membranous labyrinth. Okay, so membranous labyrinth will be present. So here, this is the bony labyrinth, and this is the membranous labyrinth. Okay, so this bony labyrinth is a series of channels. Inside these channels lies the membranous labyrinth, which is surrounded by a fluid. They will be this bony labyrinth will be making two cavities, that is scala vestibuli and scala tympani, which will be filled with the perilymph. And this scala media, which is basically formed by the membranous labyrinth, will be filled with the endolymph. Okay, endolymph. And this coiled portion of this labyrinth is called as cochlea. This is called as cochlea. This coiled portion will be called as cochlea. And this space will be basically opening into the space within the cochlea called scala media is filled, as we have seen, is filled with the so it's filled with the endolymph. Okay, this scala vestibuli will be opening into the oval window, while the scala tympani terminates at the round window, which opens into the middle ear. Okay, that was about the structure of middle ear, outer ear, and the inner ear. Now let us see the organ of Corti. This is something important. The organ of Corti is a structure located at the basilar membrane. So here this is the basilar membrane. This is the basilar membrane, and upon this membrane we have got specific cells, which are called as organ of Corti. We have got organ of Corti. So organ of Corti is a structure located at the basilar membrane, which contains hair cells. These cells will be containing the hair cells, okay, that acts as the auditory receptors. So these are the cells which will be functioning as a auditory receptors. So the organ of Corti, which are present on the basilar membrane, will be consisting the hair cells, which are responsible for receiving the auditory senses, okay. The hair cells are present in rows on the internal side of the organ of Corti. So this is the organ of Corti, and this hair cells will present inside this, okay, will be present in the rows, okay. Now what happens, this hair cells are present in rows on the internal side of the organ of Corti. The basal end of the hair cell is in close contact with the afferent nerve fibers. So the base of this hair cells will be in contact with the afferent nerve fibers. So afferent nerve fibers are those fibers which will be taking the message from sense organs to the nervous system, to the central nervous system particularly. So a large number of processes. What happens, the basal end of the hair cell is in close contact with the afferent nerve fiber. This is the afferent nerve fiber, we can see, okay. So it will be in contact with the basal fibers. It will be in contact with the bases of the hair cells. A large number of processes called as stereocilia are projected from the apical part of each hair cell. So each hair cell will be basically having an apical part through which a large number of processes called stereocilia are projected. The stereocilia are the filamentous parts, which are hair-like parts projected from this apical part of the hair cell. And above the rows of hair cells is a thin elastic membrane called as tectorial membrane. So there will be this is the tectorial membrane. These are the hair cells. This is the organ of Corti. These hair cells are basically present in this organ of Corti, and they are basically arranged in a rows. This base of this hair cells will be connected to the fibers. This is connected to the afferent fibers, afferent muscle neural fiber, okay. And this apical region of this hair cell will be basically having the filamentous structures, ciliated structures, okay. And there will be a thin elastic membrane present above this. There will be a thin elastic membrane called as tectorial membrane will be present on the rows above this hair cell. On the rows above this hair cell, there will be a thin elastic membrane present, which is called as tectorial membrane. The inner ear also contains a complex system called as vestibular apparatus. The inner membrane will be also consisting a complex system called as vestibular apparatus, located above the cochlea. So this is the cochlea. Above this cochlea there will be a specific structure called as vestibular apparatus. It's a whole complex system, okay. The vestibular apparatus is composed of 3 semicircular canals and a otolith. The vestibular complex system will be consisting of semicircular canals. They will be consisting of semicircular canals and an otolith. Macula is the sensory part of sacculae and the utricle. Okay, so this will be mainly the sensory pathway of the utricle and the saccules. Okay, each semicircular canal lies in a different plane at a right angle to each other. So this semicircular canals present in this vestibular apparatus will be lying in at a right angles to each other. The membranous canals are suspended in the perilymph. The membranous canals are suspended in the perilymph of the boring canals. So these membranous canals are basically suspended. This is the scala vestibuli. This vestibuli will be having a complex system called as vestibular apparatus. which is located above this cochlea. Okay, now the vestibular apparatus will be composed of 3 semicircular canals. It will be consisting 3 semicircular canals and an otolith. Now each semicircular canal lies in a different planes at right angles at each other, and the membrane canals, these membrane canals are present suspended in this perilymph. This is the perilymph present in this vestibula. These canals are basically suspended in this perilymph of the bony canals. Okay, now the base of this canal is swollen and is called as ampulla. This base of this canal is swollen and is called as ampulla, which contains a projective ridge called as crista ampullaris, which will be the base of these canals will be containing the ampulla, which is basically containing the which contains a projective ridge called as crista ampullaris, which has hair cells. The saculae and the utricle contain a projective ridge called as macula. So this will be containing a specific structure called as projective ridge called as crista ampullaris, which has hair cells, and this saculae and the utricle contains a projective ridge called as macula. The crista and macula are the specific receptors of the vestibular apparatus responsible for maintenance of the balance of the body and posture. So we have got scala vestibular apparatus consisting of the semicircular canals, which will be basically lying at 90 degree of each other at right angles to each other, and these membranous canals are suspended within the perilymph of the vestibular regions. Okay, and this will be consisting a specific hair cells. This will be consisting of specific hair cells, which contain specific hair cells, and this called as crista. This will be consisting of some specific projecting ridge structures called as crista ampullaris, which has hair cells. And this crista and this macula, the sacula and the utricles contain a projecting ridge called as macula. This crista and macula, keep it in mind, the crista and the macula are the specific receptors. These are the main receptors which are responsible for maintenance of body balance and posture. So it will be having some specific cells called as crista and the macula, which are responsible for maintaining the balance of the body and posture. That was about the inner ear. So we have seen the main structure of the ear, that is the outer ear, middle ear and the inner ear. Outer ear basically not having so much function, auditory function. The middle ear will be basically having the bones and the eustachian tube, and the inner ear will be having two parts, the labyrinth part, okay, which will be basically consisting of the which is basically having the organ of corti, which will be having the hair cells, and this hair cells will be having a membrane called as tectorial membrane, and this whole system is responsible for the auditory receptors. Okay, they will be having auditory receptors through which the noise will be or sound will be sensed, and it will be the impulse generated will be taken to the central nervous system by the auditory nerves. Okay, while the another structure, that is the vestibular apparatus will be present in the perilymph or present in the vestibules. Okay, where the apparatus will be the semicircular canals will be suspended, having the two cells called as crista and the macula. This crista and macula will be the receptors for the vestibular apparatus responsible for the maintenance of the balance of the body and the posture. That is about the structure of the ear. Okay, so let us discuss it once again. So the outer ear, it performs two main functions: hearing and the maintenance of body balance. Anatomically, the ear can be divided into three major sections called as outer, middle and the inner ear. Outer ear consists of pinna and external auditory emitters. We have seen that the pinna collects the vibrations in the air. Okay, and then transmit to the inner ear. Okay, and the inner ear is basically up to the tympanic membrane. And there are very very fine hairs and wax secreting glands in the skin of the pinna and the meatus. Okay, we are responsible for protection particularly. The tympanic membrane is composed of connective tissues covered with the skin outside and the mucus inside. This is the structure, and this is the now middle ear. The middle ear will be consisting of ossicles called as malleus, insus and the steps, which are attached to the one another in a chain-like fashion. So over here the steps are attached to the oval window, while the malleus is attached to the tympanic membrane, and the ear ossicles increase the efficiency of transmission of sound waves. Okay, eustachian tube will be connecting the middle ear to the pharynx. Okay, and the inner ear will be having the fluid filled inner ear called labyrinth, consists of two parts: bony labyrinth and the membranous labyrinth. The bony labyrinth will be basically containing the perilymph, while the membrane labyrinth will be containing the endolymph. Okay, and they will be basically the bony labyrinth will be forming the bony cavity, that is scala vestibuli and the scala tympani, while the membranous cavity will be formed called as scala media, okay, filled with the endolymph. At the base of cochlea, the scala vestibuli will be opening into the oval window, and the scala tympani will be opening into the round window, which will open to the middle ear. The organ of Cotai is the structure located at the basilar membrane, which contains the hair cells that act as the auditory receptors. At base of these hair cells, there will be the auditory nerve fibers will be there, which will be taking this sensories, which is the sensory neuron, afferent neurons. Okay, they will be taking the impulses from the sense organs to the central nervous system. A large number of processes called as stereocilia are projected from the apical part of hair cells, and above this there will be a tectorial membrane, which is elastic in nature. Okay, the inner ear is also contains a complex system called a vestibular apparatus located above the cochlea. This apparatus will be composed of 3 semicircular canals and the otolith. Okay, that otolith is the macula, the sensory part of the sacula and the utricle, and they will be containing the structures called as crista ampullaris with the hair cells. The sacula and the utricles are contained in the projecting ridge called as macula. The crista and the macula are the specific receptors of the vestibular apparatus responsible for maintenance of the balance and the body posture. That was about the structure of the ear particularly. Okay, and next let us see the mechanism of hearing. Okay, so how does we hear? So the how does the ear convert the sound waves into the neural impulses? Because all the impulses or the signals will be basically transmitted in the form of impulses only to the central nervous system. So these are which are sensed and processed by the brain, enabling us to recognize the sound. So how does the ear will be converting the sound waves into the neural impulses, which will be recognized and analyzed by the brain, and hence we can recognize the sound. And the external ear receives the sound waves. We have seen the external ear will be receiving the sound waves. Okay, and then direct these sound waves to the eardrum, and then it directs the sound wave to the eardrums. The eardrum vibrates and in response to the sound waves. Whenever the sound waves are basically formed, is getting in contact with this eardrum will start vibrating. Okay, so these vibrations are transmitted through the ear ossicles. The vibrations are transmitted through this ear ossicle, that is malleus, incisors and steps. Okay, to the oval window, we know that. So it will be opening of the cochlea. So these transmissions, sound waves are transmitted through this ossicles to the oval window. The vibrations are passed through the oval window to the fluid of cochlea. The fluid of the cochlea, if you know, endolymph and the perilymph, where they generate waves in the lymph. So when these vibrations are basically passing into the fluid, it will be generating the waves in this lymph, and the waves in lymph produces a ripple in a basilar membrane. This will be responsible for producing a ripple in this basilar membrane. Okay, and this movement of basilar membrane bends the hair cells. Due to this movement of this basilar membrane, what will happen? The hair cells present on this basilar membrane or organ of Cotai will start bending. Okay, and pressing them against the tectorial membrane. When they bend, they will be getting pressed against the tectorial membrane. As a result, the nerve impulses are generated. As a result of this, the nerve impulses are generated in the associated afferent neurons. So the afferent neurons will be present over there. So they will, in these afferent neurons, the nerve impulses are generated, and these impulses are transmitted by afferent fibers via the auditory nerves to the auditory cortex of the brain. So these neurons will be transmitting these impulses to the auditory cortex of the brain via the auditory nerves, where the impulses are analyzed and the sound is recognized, and we can, depending on the memory particularly. So this was about the mechanism of hearing. So how we hear? So first of all, the auditory canal and the pinea will be receiving the sound vibration. This sound vibration will be basically coming in contact with the tympanic membrane, where the vibration is basically continued or will be transmitted through the ossicles, that is incisors, malleus and the steps, where these steps will be connected to the inner ear and to the oval window, and through this oval window it will get into the lymph of the cochlea. And the lymph, when it produces a ripple effect, and this rippling will be responsible for this vibration will be passing to this, and it will bring the waves, will generate the waves in the limbs, and this waves in the limbs induces a ripple effect in the basilar membrane, and this movement of the basal membrane start bending the hair cells on pressing these hair cells against the tectorial membrane, and this membrane this in response will be generating the action potentials in the afferent neuron. Okay, and this action potential will be then transmitted through this afferent neuron into the auditory cortex of the brain, okay, through the auditory nerves. Okay, and over there the impulses are analyzed and the sound is recognized on the basis of a previous experience and the memory. Okay, so this is how the sensory organs like ears and the eyes will be functioning. So that's all. Thank you. So we are done with the whole structure of the brain, types of the nervous system, the functioning, and the sense organs, mainly the ear and the eyes. Okay, so we have done with the internal and external structure of the ear and how the functioning of the ear will be taking place. That's all. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice day.